In a small apartment in New York, where water dripped from the ceiling and the smell of dampness had soaked into the walls, a 34-year-old man sat on the floor. His name was Marcus Evans. On the table before him lay a blank sheet of paper, a pen, and a decision that was about to change his life. Marcus once had everything in his life, and then one day, everything was taken away. 5 years ago, he worked on Wall Street, a good salary, a big car, and a bright future. People would look at him and say, "That man is going to go far." But then in 1983, a company collapsed. A wrong decision was made, and a lie was placed on his shoulders, one he had never told. The job was gone, his home was gone, the respect was gone, and the peace in his heart was gone too. For the next 5 years, he wandered from one room to another, one city to another, from one hope to the next disappointment. Now in 1988, he sat in that same room with the dripping ceiling, only a few dollars in his pocket, and only one question in his heart. What now? That same night, his neighbor, a 79-year-old elder named Mr. David Simmons, came to his door. Marcus opened it. David was holding a plate of warm soup and bread. He said gently, "You haven't eaten anything today." Marcus replied with a faint smile, "I'm fine." But he knew it was a lie. David looked into his eyes. His gaze carried the kind of understanding that only comes to those who have walked through great trials themselves. Marcus said,
"Please come in."
David stepped inside, sat down on an old chair, and stayed quiet for a few moments. Then he spoke softly. "I am 79 years old, and I have learned one thing in this life. When the mind becomes too full, empty it. Write it down on paper or say it out loud, but do not keep it locked inside. Pain kept hidden breaks a person. Pain let out makes a person strong." Marcus took a sip of the soup and said quietly,
"I just don't see any way out. Everything is already finished."
David smiled gently. It was the kind of smile that held no argument, only peace. He said, "When everything is gone, what remains is the real person. The person who existed before desires and fears took over. Remember, your greatest wealth is you yourself." The next morning, Marcus picked up that blank sheet of paper and began to write. It was not a business plan. It was not a letter. It was every feeling that had gathered inside his heart and mind. Anger, shame, fear, regret, broken dreams, memories, and new hopes. 3 hours later, the paper was full, and Marcus's mind felt light. But this emptiness wasn't loneliness. It was the peace you feel in the air after rain. Clean, fresh, and ready for a new beginning. That same day, Marcus left the house. He went to the library, not with any plan, but simply because it was warm inside, and entry was free. There, his eyes landed on a notice board. Marcus thought to himself, "I can write at least." And he walked into the workshop. The workshop instructor was James Okafor. He had come from Nigeria and had been living in New York for the past 20 years. His voice was deep, his words were few, but every word he spoke settled straight into the heart. He said to the class, "Today, write about your greatest failure, but write it the way you would speak to a close friend. No shame, no excuses, only the truth." Marcus picked up his pen and began to write. When James read his piece, he was silent for a moment. Then he said, "This is not just your story. This is the story of every person who has ever paid the price for someone else's lie." Marcus asked,
"Will anything truly change in my life?"
You wrote it. And that is the first step toward change. A person cannot move forward until they have emptied the weight they carry inside. For the next 6 months, Marcus wrote every morning. He kept taking small jobs too, sometimes in a cafe, sometimes cleaning work. But he never gave up writing. One day, James handed him an address: Bronx Community Center. A writing program for homeless youth was starting there, and they needed someone who could write and lead. The pay was low. The work was hard. But Marcus said yes without hesitation. On the first day, 15 young men sat before him. In their eyes was the same emptiness that had once lived in Marcus's own. He smiled and said, "Today we are not going to learn anything. Today we are only going to write. Whatever is in your heart, pour it all onto the paper. No grades here, no exam, and no wrong answer." One boy hesitated and said, "I don't know how to write." Marcus replied, "You don't need to know how to write. You need to know how to feel. Whatever you feel, write that." 3 years later, in 1991, the Bronx Writing Program had become recognized as one of the best community programs in America. Later, Marcus wrote his story into a book called Empty Your Mind. It never became a bestseller. He never made millions of dollars. But more than 200 young men who passed through that program succeeded in changing their lives. Marcus had given him the first copy of his book. David read it, smiled, and said, "You see, when a person empties their mind, life itself shows them new paths forward." The lesson: we all carry inside us old anger, fear, shame, and regret. That very weight is what stops us from moving forward. Marcus had a very simple method. Pick up a paper, pick up a pen, and write down everything that is in your heart and mind, without shame, without excuses. Then watch. When the mind becomes light, there is room for new hope to enter. This is not magic. This is human nature. Empty your mind, and then see what life brings for you.